Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Cretaceous City by Neil A Hogan. Dinory 1. Tyrannosaurus Rex Nathanial. The moisture-laden air hung thickly around the fragrant, wet leaves as Tyrannosaurus Rex Nathanial pushed through the fern and conifer forest on his way to his secret lair, his large claw feet leaving impressions in the soft mud as his bounding gait took him long distances with single strides, his small right forelimb claw holding his recent discoveries. Nathaniel was one of the tallest dinosaurs in the area. His massive teeth were the first thing most other dinosaurs noticed, followed by his huge head and immense bulk. His leg and tail muscles were quite springy, and he could spend several moments in the air between steps. When he was bounding across the forest very fast, he was able to use his small wings that splayed from below his forelimbs to balance and slow himself so that he came to a safe stop. They were also very useful in batting away annoying smaller dinosaurs. He was bounding now, leaping across fern tree tops and jumping over several fallen conifer logs at once. He stopped, took a deep breath of the cool air, and roared. Nathaniel was a Tyrannosaurus Rex, the most fearsome predator in the Cretaceous kingdom. Well, that's what he let everyone believe. The other smaller dinosaurs would see him crouched over a recently dead dinosaur, ripping meat off its bones with his teeth, and they'd run away, scared. The thing was, Nathaniel wasn't like his brothers, sisters, fathers, uncles, aunts, and definitely nothing like his mother. He didn't go and track dinosaurs while they foraged for food, nor did he fight dinosaurs and kill them and eat them. No, he didn't actually like doing that at all. Instead, when he was really hungry, he'd sniff around for a meal that had been recently killed by a group of small dinosaurs. The raptor packs could be quite vicious. A medium-sized dinosaur didn't stand a chance against 8 of them, but they knew not to fight against a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So, when he discovered they'd killed a dinosaur, he'd let them have a bit to eat, so that they weren't hungry anymore. He'd bound in, roar a bit, they'd run away, and he'd have a tasty meal. As he was a nice Tyrannosaurus Rex, he also left a bit over for them to come back to. He guessed that some of them suspected that he wasn't like the other Tyrannosaurus Rexes. After all, if he saw that any of them were in trouble, he'd accidentally rescue them. He wasn't sure whether they really understood, but they never attacked him, he never attacked them, and they had a kind of truce in this area of the forest. He thought about this now, as a cool breeze brought him the smell of another recent kill. Briefly, he felt his stomach growl and acid flow into it, ready for more food. He felt that insatiable hunger rush up and almost overwhelm his thoughts. He felt the blood pump through his veins, his very large heart increasing its beats. But he also took a deep breath, sighed, released the tension, and ignored the growling of his stomach. He wasn't going to go there yet. This time, he had other plans. Nathaniel reached down with his right claw, turning his head to be able to reach, and pulled to the side the tall, green, segmented horsetail plants that he had planted in front of his cave door. They had grown quickly in a year, and they were now almost as tall as him. He was quite proud of being able to take the spores from the lake and cultivate them here. He carefully entered his cave, noting that everything was as it should be. Inside was his experimentation area. On one side he'd carefully placed evenly sized rocks and laid a flat conifer tree log across them. He'd then placed other items on the log in order. Things he'd found. Shells from a beach he'd visited a while ago. Chunks of porous stone he'd collected from a near dormant volcano. Chunky strips of a shiny grey substance he'd found in the ground. Even some glowing translucent rocks, some parts with reflective surfaces. He had no idea what they did, but perhaps they could help him. He carefully placed the horsetail plants back to cover the entrance from the inside, and went over to his pile, placing the contents of his claw onto the log. Strange dark grey rocks that seemed to attract the shiny light grey rocks, as well as other shapes, sizes, and colours of rocks. He had no idea what they could be, but he knew he would be able to use them in some experiment sometime. What he was most excited about, though, was the piece of stone he'd found. When he broke it, it simply fell apart in further, sharper shards. It would be great for cutting and shaping things. He might even be able to cut harder things with it. Maybe even make a door for his cave. He dropped the sharp rock onto the greyish shiny strip, and a strange thing happened. It created a flash, like a tiny piece of lightning. Nathaniel was so surprised by this that he took a step back and stepped on his tail. He grimaced and quickly stepped off it again. This cave was far too small. He really needed to either find a new cave, or maybe even build a new place. He turned his attention back to the rocks. Maybe he could make it spark again. He grabbed the rock in his tiny claw and struck it against the shiny grey rock, observing with his right eye. The rock sparked again. Amazing! He looked around the cave for some dry grass. Near the back of his cave, where it was a little less damp, there were some thin dry twigs and some dry grass on the sandy ground. He picked them up and placed them on the wooden log, then struck the rock against the other rock. Immediately, a bit of the grass glowed briefly. The spark had singed the grass, almost like a fire created by the lightning. It really was mini lightning. Excitedly, he hit the rocks together again and again, and got the grass to ignite. Soon he had a little grass fire growing next to the twigs on the wooden log. Suddenly the flame grew higher, and he didn't know why. All the grass was almost gone. Then he realized the fire would eat the twigs and then the log. He had to put it out, but the experiment was too important. He quickly rescued all his rocks and placed them inside a bag he'd created from a dinosaur he'd eaten a while ago, then moved near the entrance to the cave to watch. The fire quickly spread to the twigs and then began eating the log. The smoke began to get quite heavy, so he moved the horsetail plants aside and left the cave, waiting outside for the fire to stop. He was too excited about this situation to care about his cave, and the fire quickly engulfed the log, burning along its length and heating the rocks underneath. Soon all the wood had been consumed, and Nathaniel looked back in at the black, charred mass with happiness. He'd created that. He'd created a fire, and now he'd also created black wood that can be used to make scratch records with. His mind began racing about all the things he could now do. Having explored burnt trees and eaten dinosaurs cooked by lightning strikes before, he suddenly had an amazing thing available to him. Materials to write with, materials to cook with, materials to heat chemicals with. He could start experimenting with everything. Heating and separating things, heating and burning things. He could discover so much now that he could change the temperature of things any time. He was so excited by the possibilities, he didn't see his Tyrannosaurus Rex family appear nearby. "So, this is where you've been hiding," said his father. "I can't believe you're not out hunting for food. Aren't you hungry?" "You are hungry, aren't you?" said his mother. "Yet you sit here and play with your toys. Why don't you grow up? Nothing good will ever come of all this playing, you know. Just be a dinosaur. Find food, find a mate, have eggs. That's all you need to do." Nathaniel just looked at them resignedly. "Yes, you're right. I'll go and look for food." They both nodded, then bounded off to jump on some smaller animals for dinner. Nathaniel watched them move off into the distance, then turned back to his blackened cave. Today was the beginning of his new life. Today he would start his research, record notes with charcoal, experiment with chemicals, and see where it led him. He'd even build a new and bigger place. He could do just about anything now. Then, his stomach growling just as loudly, he bounded off to find that group of small dinosaurs that had just brought down a Pachycephalosaurus. Hopefully they'd left some for him. He'd get back to his experiments later. He just wished there was another intelligent dinosaur out there that he could share his discoveries with.